Hello, I'm DJ Bryan Blues Cox, and I thought I'd give you a little bit of history behind DJing, what it involves, and also how it's changed over the years. Originally in 1952, the UK started their first charts, and New Music Express was the newspaper that used to tell everyone what was going on, and they also had music and interviews and stuff like that that everyone used to read. And also DJing was very in its early days really. Originally it comes from the word disc jockey, and it was just someone on a microphone, which nowadays people say MC, microphone controller and stuff. But in those days you had 78 records and you played that to music. Originally before that you had big bands in the 40s, and then from the 50s vinyls came in, wax records that everyone played instead of live music, or with live music as well. And then later on they became 45s, and they also became albums or LPs, long playing records. You had EPs which came later, which was extended play, and then you had 12 inches as well, which was basically for dance halls. And what you had was 45s. They're called singles because that's what they were. They were just single records with two sides, an A side and a B side, and later on they had double A sides if they couldn't decide whether they wanted an A and B side. And all this got played, and the more records that people bought from the shops in those days, then the higher up they would get. They'd have so many records they had to sell, and the top number one of what they called the hit parade, we just call it the charts now, and that would get to number one. You had to sell so many millions. And as we've streamed and changed along the lines as well, you now have to have 99 streams to sell one record or one single. And we call them 45s, and we call them 33 and a thirds because that's what the revolutions were, verse per minute. And all this is what we have as a backdrop. And then later on, of course, we had lights and decks and things like that. So the decks originally were the whole one kind of like unit with a tape deck in the middle sometimes, but the early decks were just two decks that you played one after the other. And also DJs just used to announce the songs, and then later on people started to play songs and keep people dancing. And that was really basically what a DJ used to do. And then later on, when things started to change from vinyl, they started to change to CDs. DJs didn't have a lot to do because before you had to get the record, you'd find out where it starts, rewind it, work out what you're going to say, if you're going to say anything. If you had like an introduction to a record, like maybe the Thunderbirds Countdown or something, you'd play that next, and then you'd only have a certain amount of time before you played the next record. And then sometimes you would talk about say what the record is or something like that. But most of the time, you started to play one record, then the other record, then another record, and you keep playing that, and then you slowly go on to slow records at the end of the evening. And I think a lot of people still do that. So what they did was they beat matched, and they did some other things like that to kind of like change the rhythm, keep it going, change the tempo. And originally you had a 4 beat that you had, but now it's all done on computers, so you can just look at it, you arrange the pitch and the speed and all these sort of things that you can change just by doing that. And then also you have lights and all these sort of things, and you have nowadays you have like two single decks that DJs use, and also you have stands rather than whole buildings. You have amplifiers and speakers, and that's basically what you're using these days. And of course nowadays you have MP3s and computers, and you can use those, although a lot of DJs that I know and used to know went back to CDs, and most new DJs go back to vinyl. So that's basically the club scene that you have. You get people dancing, you keep them dancing, and you don't stop. Now, what's the difference between a radio DJ and a radio presenter? Well, basically, a radio DJ has a slightly different job from a club DJ, because you're basically saying, well, this record is and that record is, and then you might give some facts in between. Whereas a presenter doesn't even have to talk about what the record is. They might just be talking about the weather, the sunshine, or whatever they're going to talk about, and they talk to their guests and things like that. So they don't have to do anything. They just basically play music, and they don't even have to know music to be a presenter. So that's the difference, main difference between DJing on the radio and also DJ, or also presenting as well. So that's a bit of information for you. And I think with radio DJs as well, with me, I just play music and talk, and then sometimes I talk about facts and things like that. And it's a very different kind of thing. But nowadays, you don't even have carts either, so you don't have like physical carts where you had to put a cassette into a player, and then you put your finger on the first button and it played the advert, and then it would pop out and the next one would play, and so on. But nowadays they're all on MP3, and you basically just talk about what you want to talk about in the meantime. And radio presenting is very different from DJing altogether. I hope that's a bit of information that you might find interesting.